Hey guys, it's Sarah, and today we're going to talk about my favorite children. This is so hard. These are my top 10 books of 2019, the top 10 books that I read in 2019. And this was probably one of the hardest decisions I've had to make. It took me days to figure out what kind of my top like the best of the best books are. Picking a top 10 wasn't super hard. I keep track as I go throughout the year. I'll put a little asterisk next to the ones that were just my absolute favorites when I read them. And then I'll go back, sometimes. And sometimes I'll erase some of the asterisks. Sometimes I'll add some. And I kind of keep track of it throughout the year. That way, when I'm ready to pick my top, a lot of my top are already picked for me. But this one was hard. And it was hard to decide kind of what the top ones were of these 10. And I don't know. I'm pretty comfortable. I'm comfortable with my top 4, but I don't know that I could pick one standout. I think I did, but it was really, really hard. I do want to give 2 honorable mentions though, because there were 2 books that also were kind of on my list, but it didn't quite make the top 10, but they were way, way up there and they very easily could have. And the first one is I Can't Make This Up by Kevin Hart. This was definitely my favorite audiobook of the year. I love Kevin Hart as a comedian. He's so funny. We've seen him in person and he's ridiculous. I do not remember laughing that much in one sitting before. He's exactly what he presents as what he is. And this book was great because it's a lot of comedy in it. Obviously, that's what he does, but it's a lot of life lessons that he's learned throughout his life and throughout his career and things that he learned the hard way and relationships and stuff like that. And I really liked how he tied a lot of his life lessons into some of his comedy and stuff. And it's definitely one of the best audiobooks I've ever listened to. If you're a Kevin Hart fan, you have to listen to this audiobook because I was laughing 30 seconds into it. He's so great. And then the other honorable mention I want to give to is Vicious by B.E. Schwab. This is one that I picked up as a 5-star prediction that one of you guys had told me to read because you thought I would give it 5 stars. And oh boy, did I. I expected to like this book. I did not expect to be completely obsessed with it. I flew through it so quickly. It's a superhero book, basically. It's these 2 college-age men who meet in school and they're roommates and they are able to figure out a way that they can make themselves superhuman. And they think that they're going to do this to themselves so they can be like superheroes, but they end up being supervillains instead. Oh, it's so good. Like if you want epic battles between kind of 2 bad guys, oh, it's fantastic. And I also read the follow-up, Vengeful, which I really liked as well. I didn't like it as much as Vicious, but oh my gosh, Vicious was absolutely a 5-star read and definitely probably my biggest surprise of the year. Okay, so let's talk about my top 10. Now, these first 6 books are in no order at all. I picked them off my shelves because I knew that these were my favorites of the year. So I'm just going to show them to you. They're not in any type of order, but then I'll show you my top 4. Whew. We're going to get through this, guys. Okay. The first one on the top of my pile is Sawkill Girls. This is written by Claire Legrand. Claire Legrand has quickly become one of my favorite authors. I have given all of her books 5 stars that I have read so far. I have a few more on my shelves now to read thanks to my book outlet haul, and I will definitely be reading those. But this one is a young adult kind of a magical horror book is what I'm calling it. It's definitely a horror. There's monsters in here. There's magical things happening in this book, and they're pretty scary. It was very Stranger Things-ish to me. From like that was kind of the vibes I was getting, like supernatural beings and stuff. And oh man, this thing was creepy. Like this book was very, very creepy. So it follows a girl who moves to this island called Sawkill Rock, and she moves with her mother because her mother takes this job working as a housekeeper for a very prominent family who lives on this island. And upon getting onto the island, this girl learns that there have been multiple girls that have disappeared over the years from this island. Very mysterious. No one knows where they are or how they disappeared or why. And she has her sister disappear. Her sister disappeared on this island very shortly after they get there. And so she's very much involved in trying to figure out what happened to her sister, what's happening to these girls, what's going on. There's some people of interest that are popping up here and there. And you see her band together with a couple of girls to try to figure all this out. At the same time, you know what's going on because you're getting another perspective. So this is like a dual perspective type thing. So you're seeing what is actually going on, and then you're seeing Marion trying to figure out what's going on. It was really, really good. I enjoyed every single page of this book. And it was definitely a 5-star. So another one, which is definitely my favorite nonfiction of the year. So this is my second nonfiction book, including the Kevin Hart one, but The Stranger Beside Me by Anne Rule. Now this book is one that follows Anne's personal relationship with Ted Bundy. And she worked with him before we knew exactly what he was and what kind of person he was and the infamous serial killer that we know today. She worked with him and had, a personal friendship with him. And she documents that all in this book and talks about their interactions together and her impersonations of him, and when she kind of started having suspicious feelings about him, and the shock that she felt when she found out exactly what he did, and her struggle to believe whether or not this was all true. And she goes to all his trials and she sees the downward spiral that we end up seeing as well. It was fantastic. I ate this up. And I'm not a huge nonfiction reader. I've been picking some things up here and there. I'm being very picky about what I pick up, but this one just kept me captivated the whole time. There was a section in here that all happened close to where I live currently and where I'm from and where I went to college. And, oh my gosh, I've walked down that street probably a million times and I did not know that Ted Bundy was arrested on that street. Like that was where he was captured in Pensacola. I didn't know that. He stayed at a hotel in Crestview, which is 20 miles from my house. And it's just like, oh my gosh, it's so it gave me those vibes, even though all this happened before I was even born, but it was crazy. I loved every minute of it. Her writing is fantastic in here as well. This is one nonfiction book that I did not listen to the audiobook. I read it and could not put it down. So it was fantastic. Definitely want to read more from this author. All right. So another one is Illuminate by Jay Kristoff and Amy Kaufman. And this is a science fiction book. It's a young adult. It is told in a mixed media format. So it is emails, it is transcripts, notes, just like voicemails, text messages, all that kind of stuff. So there's no just straight storytelling in here. This one follows 2 teenagers who live on a planet, and their planet is being invaded. And that happens at the very beginning of this book. So they are being forced to evacuate onto 2 different spaceships. And they're kind of stranded out in space on these spaceships because their planet is under attack and they can't go back. So they're trying to find somewhere that they can be safe and that they can find refuge. All the while, there's another spaceship that is coming towards them with the intention of taking them out. And oh, it was so good. So you see them communicating because they're on different spaceships. So you see them communicating together and trying to help each other and trying to figure out what's going on. All the while, some weird disease breaks out on both of their ships and they're under really scary situations. And it was so good. It was so action packed. It was tense. It was I felt myself just trying to catch my breath sometimes because of what they were going through. And I listened to the audiobook while I read along in the book. That's exactly how I did it. The entire thing. I went through the entire thing with it along with the audiobook. And I highly, highly recommend doing that. It just adds to the experience. And the audiobook is fantastic. It's a full cast and it just adds so much more to the text as you're reading it. It gives it more context and it really immerses you into it. It's almost like an experience. I loved it so much. Easy 5 stars for me. Jay Kristoff is easily becoming one of my favorite authors of all time. And I can't wait to read the other 2 books in this trilogy. Another author that I have discovered this year is Taylor Jenkins Reid, and I picked up The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. I also read Daisy Jones and the Six. I think I enjoyed this one just a little bit more. This one follows a Hollywood starlet who was in her prime in the 50s and 60s, and her name was Evelyn Hugo. So you follow her as she gives her life story to a journalist. And so you're getting dual timelines. You're seeing what's happening as she's telling the story, and then you're seeing her interact with this journalist and all that. Now, Evelyn was married 7 different times, and so that's why it's called The Seven Husbands. So she goes through each husband and talks about that experience and why she married him. They were very specifically picked out for certain reasons. And, you know, some of them, she generally felt that she loved them, and some of them helped her get ahead in her career. And then along the way, you find out who her one true actual love is. And then, you know, you find out other things along the way. It was really, really good. I really liked it a lot. I gave it 5 stars. I mean, not I really liked it a lot. I loved it. I thought it was brilliantly written. I thought I had some things figured out, but then I didn't really. So I enjoyed that aspect of it as well. And just the way that she writes is fantastic. So of the 2 that I read, they were both 5 stars, but I'm going to put this one on my top. Another 5-star read. I think these are all 5-star reads, let's be real. The Silent Patient by Alex Michaelides. And this one shocked me probably the most, I think, of any book that I've read this year. This one has one of those plot twists that I will never forget. I thought it was brilliant. I did not see it coming. And this one gets mixed reviews. And I understand if people could figure out the twist, then I understand why you didn't enjoy it all that much. I get it. I did not see it coming. And I don't know if I just wasn't thinking about it all that much, or it just genuinely shocked me. I don't know. But it was fantastic. And it caused me to I just remember being so shocked. And I read this one with Kristen. We were both shocked. We were both like, what is happening? So yeah, we both really enjoyed this one, but it's fantastic. I really liked it a lot. I will definitely read more from this author if he has more stuff coming out. But yeah, I just probably my favorite thriller of the year. And another one is Game of Thrones by George R.R. Martin. This was my Game of Thrones year because I watched the entire TV series and then I picked up the first book and read it. I read this along with Brittany from the Continuing Chronicles, and we absolutely loved it. We took an entire month to read it, and we had both seen the show before. So we both knew the show and, you know, kind of knew the characters going into it. So for me, I think that helped my enjoyment of it, or it helped me to follow along and be able to read through it a little quicker. I think if I had gone into this completely cold and not seeing the show, it might have taken me longer to get through because there's so many characters that you're following in here and so many different plot lines to follow, which is what the show is as well. But already having that, you know, basically told to me in the TV show format was good. And the first season of the show is this book. It's exactly the same. So, but because of that, I loved it because I love the TV show so much. And it was great to be with these characters again. And just to kind of relive all that, I was rewatching the scenes in my head as I was reading the book. So it was done really, really well. I do plan to read this entire series now. I have seen the entire TV show. I know that they are different at some point. I have heard, this is all hearsay, I have heard that after book 2 is when the TV show started deviating. So I think book 2 is going to be pretty similar to season 2. And then after that, it kind of goes its own way, which is totally fine because that's going to be a different experience for me. So I'm excited to kind of, you know, get all the back, you know, first things done in the first 2 books and then continue on and see what happens in the books versus what happens in the TV show. So I'm excited to see that, but loved this. I loved every page of it. It surprised me a little bit because this was one of my more intimidating books on my TBR, but I'm glad that I read it, and I'm still collecting the books. I still need to get the 5th book, I think, in this TV tie-in edition, but I have all the other ones, and I'm excited to just keep on going. Okay, guys, now we're getting into our top 4. Okay, I think this is in the right order. Okay, number 4 is Love and Other Words by Christina Lauren. And this is another favorite author of all time. I think I've read 3 different authors that have become my favorites. So Christina Lauren, Taylor Jenkins Reid, and Claire Legrand. I have discovered them for myself this year and just cannot put their books down. And every single book I've read by all of them have been 5 stars. So It's been fantastic. And this one I think is my favorite of the 3 that I read from them this year. This one follows, oh gosh, Elliot and Macy. And I feel like I've been talking about this book a lot, but it's just so good. Elliot and Macy, they meet when they are young children. Well, young children, they're like 11 or 12 or something. They form a friendship, and you see that friendship grow closer over the years and into high school, and then it becomes something more. And then it very quickly dissipates, and they cut off communication completely because of something that happened. Fast forward, I believe 11 years later, they accidentally run into each other in a coffee shop, and that spark is immediately back. And you see them struggle with whether or not they want to be a part of each other's lives again, because they have both kind of moved on. And you're going back and forth. So you're going back to when they were kids and their relationship, and you're kind of seeing their progression happen. And then you go to the future, and then you're seeing them, coming back into each other's lives again. And it was beautiful. It was beautiful and suspenseful too, because I wanted to know what happened to break them up. What happened in high school to break them up. And then you find out. But it was just, oh my gosh, I loved the characters so much, to the point where when this book was over, I was upset because it was done. And I didn't want it to be done. I wanted them to keep going, and I wanted to know more, and I missed them, and I wanted to immediately turn the book over and start from the beginning again. And I've never felt that way about a book before. I've never finished a book and then wanted to just start over again. This is the first time that's ever happened to me in all the reading I've ever done. So this one got me. I loved it so much. I would definitely reread it. Obviously, I wanted to right away. And yeah. Okay, number 3. Okay. Nevermore by Jessica Townsend. I read the first 2 books in the Nevermore series this year, and I am eagerly awaiting the third book, which comes out in August. Oh, it's killing me. It was supposed to come out in March, and now it's pushed to August, and I cried a little bit. This is a middle grade magical book, and it follows a young girl named Morgan Crow, and she is 11 years old, turning 11 years old in the beginning of this book, and she believes that she's cursed, or everyone around her believes that she's cursed. So things happen around her that are always awful and bad, and people blame her for it because she's cursed. Therefore, if you're even standing next to her, something bad's going to happen to you, because that's how cursed she is. Now, children who are cursed are predicted to die on their 11th birthday. So she's ready. She's prepared for this. She knows what's going to happen. She's made peace with it. At her 11th birthday party, a man named Jupiter North shows up and basically says, "Hey, you don't have to die. Come with me." She does, and he takes her to this place called Nevermore. Now, Nevermore is a section of their world that she didn't even know existed, and it has a magical academy there where you have to apply and you have to be nominated to get in, and then you have to go through all these trials to get into it. So this just has all of my buzzwords in it. It's magic, it's trials, so good. I loved every single word of this book. I really did. It gets a lot of comparisons to Harry Potter, which I completely agree with, but it's not Harry Potter. It's different enough that you can tell it's not trying to be Harry Potter. It is its own thing. It's its own story. It's not copying Harry Potter at all, but it gives you the same kind of feelings that I had when I was reading Harry Potter as well, which is my favorite book series of all time. So because of that, absolutely made it into my top 3. And I loved the second book as well. And I'm so excited for the third book. And I loved them. Eat it up. Number 2 and number 1, I went back and forth, you guys. I could have put either one in either one of these spots. So that being said, number 2 is Scythe by Neil Shusterman. I loved this book. I spent the whole time almost with my mouth hanging open because of how shocked I was at how good it was. And I've heard wonderful things and everyone raves about it. And I don't know why I slept on it for so long, because I've had this for a while, but I finally picked it up and I loved it so much. Obviously, it's one of my favorites of the year. So this follows a I'm going to call it a utopian world where it's set in the future. It's set in our world, but it's set in the future. And society has come up with a way where death does not exist anymore. So there's no sickness, there's no cancer, there's no dying from a car accident. None of that stuff can happen to you anymore. But that also means there's no population control because no one's dying, but people are still having babies. And when you reach a certain age, you can actually reset yourself to go back to a younger version of yourself. And then you can kind of start over again almost. So you can have more children when you do that. And that's what people are doing. And it's going to be overpopulated. And then you're not going to be able to live, right? So they had to come up with a way to have population control. And that's where the Scythes come in. These are trained people who are appointed to determine who is going to actually die. And there's a certain system they have to follow. There's certain guidelines they have to follow. It's regulated. They have to answer to all of the kills that they make. And you see our two main characters become apprentices for a Scythe. And so they are learning the process of it. They're learning what goes into it and what it takes and how hard it is. And it was fascinating. It really was. Just a lot of the commentary on it was so interesting, and it made you think about, what if you were in that position where you had to decide who lived and who died? How would you make that decision? And some of it made sense and then some of it didn't. And you see, people be partial to a certain type of people and, or make a certain type of people more of a victim for them. So it was really, really interesting. A lot happens in here, so I'm not going to go into any details, obviously, but I loved it so much. I cannot wait to read the other two books in this trilogy. I do have them on my shelf, so I do plan to get to those very, very soon. But I absolutely loved it. Neil Shusterman, more please of him. And yeah, I loved it. Okay, here we go. Number one. But it could have been Scythe. But the number one book that was my absolute favorite that I read in 2019 was Beartown by Frederick Bachman. You want to talk about social commentary? Oh my gosh, this one was insane. So this follows a very small town in Sweden that is very much centered around this hockey team that is in their town. That is basically the center of their town. And because it's so small, a lot of the focus is on these boys who are on this hockey team, and they're all in high school because they have the potential to be national champions, and there's a lot of pressure on them because of that. They are relying on these boys to help their economy by bringing people in and having people wanting to join this team. So they're moving to the town and, all that stuff. So they are very, very popular, pretty much treated like gods, very similar to the way some of our pro athletes are treated as well. And so you're following, some of the people on this team, some of the boys on this team, and then some of the kids in the high school and everything, and along with their coach and all that stuff and their manager. And there was a party that happens after one of the games, and the captain of this team rapes the daughter of the manager of the team at this party. And you see all this happen. The big talking points and the big things that really affect you is the aftermath of that, because you see the town react to it because it's not a secret. There's witnesses. There's, she comes forward about it. And so you see how people react to her. You see how people react to him, to the team, to the kids who are there. To the families of both of them, and you see how they react themselves. So this book is full of quotable lines. I could have probably filled a notebook just copying down, quotes and things from here that he gets so right, and just makes you so many times I paused and I went, oh man, wow. I definitely, if you haven't read this, I would recommend reading it with somebody. I read this one with Amanda from the Curly Reader, and we had a lot to talk about back and forth. And some of the quotes and stuff, we were picking out some of the same quotes as well. So she would, send me a message and say, oh, this one on this page and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, I was thinking the same thing. I wrote that down too. And just so many things to make you think about and think about how you would react to the things that happened in here. Like if this was something that happened around you, it makes you think about how we treat our athletes as well and how much they get away with because they're athletes. And because they're so talented, well, that's great, but you also can't do these things. You know what I mean? Having talent doesn't mean that you can do just whatever you want and you can get away with it. That's not okay. We see that a lot. There's a lot of excuses made for not only our athletes, but our actors and famous people and people with a lot of money, politicians. Don't even get me started. Just, it makes you think, and it's all in here, and just, it was so good. It was so, so good. And it's one that I still think about. I think about this book a lot. So it's definitely one that I will reread again in the future. I'm going to read the second book as well. I have it on my shelves. I will be reading that very early on in 2020, and I can't wait to get to that one. And yeah, so favorite book of 2019, officially, Beartown by Frederick Backman. Okay, guys, those are my favorites of the year. I still can't even tell you how hard it was to narrow it down, but I had a really, really great reading year for 2019, for sure. So let me know what your favorites were of the year. If you have a number one, let me know what that is down below. I'd really like to know that. And if I have it on my shelf, maybe I'll pull it and see if I can read that soon as well. And yeah, let me know if you read any of these books and what you thought, or if any of them are on your radar and all that good stuff. And I will talk to you guys again soon. Hope you have a great day.